Thanks for tuning in today. I wanted to talk a little bit about being African American in the United States and kind of what I see as the lie of equity and a couple other things in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, since he really spoke about equality and the fact that all people, all individuals are created equal, not just under the eyes of God, but in society, regardless of socioeconomic status, class, whatever. We're all equal. So, really, I wanted to talk about a few things today. First, I wanted to talk about the misconception and lie of what equity actually is. Then, I wanted to move into identitarianism versus meritocracy and character. Then, we'll move into the idea of what is actually the most harmful things to the black community at large. And then I wanted to provide some solutions, and then we'll close out. So, really quick, if you haven't seen any of my other content, my name's Jonah Clement. I am technically half black and half white. I don't identify really as either. I identify as a person. I identify as just, I'm Jonah. I exist. I am. But basically, I wanted to kick today's conversation off and discuss equity and what equity is versus what equality is. So first off, what equity, in the simplest form, there you can look up a dictionary definition, but in the simplest form, it's basically creating circumstances to where everyone has equal outcome. So just to start off the bat, that is a lie. There is no such thing as equal outcome because that's an impossible thing to achieve. The only way you can achieve equal outcome is by, in essence, taking away from other people to give to people that are less fortunate or what we consider less fortunate. Now, what this really looks like is, let's say, for example, you have three people, John, Jim, and Joe. John, and I'm using monetary value, for example. It's just easier that way for people to understand. John makes $100,000 a year. Joe makes $75,000 a year. And Jim only makes $20,000 a year. Well, what equity would be is basically take money from John and Joe to give to Jim so that they all have an equal salary. So what that would look like, in essence, is you would take away probably like $20,000, or you would take away whatever money from John and Joe, and give it to Jim. Now, the funny part about that is that that's not what equality is. People try to pass that off as equality. No, it's equity. You're controlling circumstances so people end up the same. That is an impossible thing to do without basically taking away people's ability to have free will and people's ability to make decisions on their own. Now, that's in essence what's happening today in society. You have the concept that, okay, well, we need to make sure that everybody, ends up the same. Well, the funny part is about when everybody ends up the same, everybody's miserable, nobody's happy, everything's just a shit show. Now, what equality is, and this is what Dr. King actually believed in, not equity. Let me be very clear. He did not believe in the concept of equity. That never was even in his vocabulary. He believed in equality. And again, that's my opinion. Let me be very clear. But I have studied and researched Martin Luther King Jr., and he believed in the equal opportunity for everyone. Now, let me be clear. You see how I said equal opportunity, not equal outcome? Equal opportunity leaves the decision up to the person if they want to execute on that opportunity or not. That allows people to use and exercise their free will. That is their God-given right. Now, here's the thing. When equality occurs, there isn't going to be an equal outcome. That's the way of the world, because people are going to pursue different things that interest them. And in fact, not everything is equal to begin with. We're all born to different parents in a different situation. We grow up having different environments, different trauma that we experience. We go to different schools, different colleges. If you do happen to go to college, we get different jobs. So there's a lot of things that are different, but the access of opportunity to everyone should be equal. And I do agree with that. I do believe that everybody should have an equal right to a good education. I do believe, and I'm not a proponent of paying people's college, but at least K through 12, I do believe children have the access to equal education and a good education. I also believe people should have an equal opportunity to have access to good living environments and housing. And that's not the case for everybody. And in a lot of African American communities, ironically, they live in typically impoverished conditions. I was very fortunate enough to be adopted at a young age. I got adopted by my grandparents when I was 10. I actually lived with them basically since I was born, but my mom had me when she was 16. She actually got pregnant when she was 15, but she had me when she was 16. I didn't know my biological father, have any relationship with him. He bailed on my mother basically right after I was born. So she basically made the best decision to just let her parents take care of me, which ironically was probably the best decision for me at that time because it gave me the capability to live in a fruitful home and grow up. It wasn't perfect. I had a lot of things that I had to deal with growing up. I lost my mom. I lost my adoption mother at a young age due to cancer. But I grew up and had a loving home and was very fortunate. And I'm not comparing myself to other people because that's not fair. I know there's a lot of people that have had it way worse than I have. I know people that have don't have the opportunity to go to a good school because of their district, and I don't necessarily agree with that at all. I think I'm a huge proponent of school choice. I do think that all children should have access to a good education because that is really the framework and the groundwork to leading a good life. It gives you the opportunities in life that a lot of people don't necessarily get, and I'm going to dive into some of my solutions to kind of a lot of this later, but basically that's the difference between equality and equity. Now, I'm a proponent of equality. I'm not a proponent of equity. I think equity is the biggest fucking scam and hoax there's ever been in history. It's a great way for politicians to just basically lie to your face and tell you one thing while doing another. Now, let me get to the idea of identitarianism versus a meritocracy / I call it keratocracy. So what identitarianism is leading a society that focuses on identity status as the main determining factor for a person's success. So if you are, example, a white Caucasian male, I'm not going to use the word cis, that is the dumbest thing I've heard too. If you are a white Caucasian male, you are more likely to be successful than a African American man. That's what identitarianism. It's basically saying that your skin color, your religion, your race, your ethnicity determines where you will end up in life. That's fucking bullshit, okay? What determines where you end up in life is typically your merit and your character, which is intrinsic value. Who you are on the inside typically determines who you are. So if you're an evil, degenerate, just messed up person, you're probably not going to do so well. But if you're a kind, giving, caring soul that actually strives and works hard, those seeds that you plant with that hard work are typically going to bear fruit in the future. Now, we currently live in a society, a lot of this stems from affirmative action. I believe that started back in the 60s, which it's actually funny. I had a conversation with my dad about what the initial intent with affirmative action was, and I'll kind of give the definition of that. So if you have person A, let's just say it's a white male, and person B, it's a black male, and they are the exact same when it comes to all their qualifications, and it comes to a job application or a college application, they would give it to the black person because they have, when it all comes down, let's say they're equal across the board, they'll give it to the black person. That was the initial intent of affirmative action. It gave the opportunity for hardworking individuals to get into jobs and programs and colleges so that they can perform at a high level and get opportunities just like, that they would not necessarily always get. Now, what that's been kind of twisted into is that if you have, let's say, white male A and black male B, and let's say that white male A actually is overqualified and white male B is not really qualified, but they're like, okay, but they're not really the cream of the crop, they'll still give it to the black person. And that's not fair. What that is that's lowering the standard to meet the lowest common denominator and filling, in essence, quotas and filling this idea of diversity for the sake of diversity rather than filling it in based on qualifications and merit. Now, it's kind of funny how we consider diversity to be people from different backgrounds, religions, races, and whatnot. And that is an aspect of diversity, but where diversity truly lies is diversity of thought. Because thought is unique to each person, and the funny part is you can have, and this is why I find it so funny, because if you, as what society would identify me as, being at least part black, all this stuff that I'm saying, I basically instantly lose my black card, which I find to be hilarious. I don't care. I never had it to begin with because it's just I think it's the most ridiculous thing ever. But The fact that I don't align with the traditional African American, narrative and values means I'm not black. I'm something else. I'm not part of that community, and it doesn't matter because that's just identitarianism. You're going down to the roots of to a race or ethnicity or religion, and that's what you identify as, rather than identifying as yourself and identifying as an individual that has character. Just like Dr. King said, let's judge people based off their character and the contents of their heart, not their skin color. Yet in society today, we do the exact opposite. We've literally regressed in the past 50 years back to what the entire civil rights movement was fighting against. And it's insane. You can see this today. There's been some recent policy releases in these omnibus bills where they're basically paying certain student debt for just black college students and not anybody else. They're also there was this grant thing recently with just affecting black farmers, which basically, again, was you're just elevating one group while at the same time being a detriment to everyone else. In reality, we need to be focusing on elevating everybody up, not just certain groups of people. Because usually when you elevate one group, you're taking away from another. And in reality, that's ridiculous and not fair. And I understand life's not fair, but the fact that you're trying to control the outcome of things is in itself really just evil and wrong. Now, focusing on a merit or character-based society is looking at people's intrinsic value. And what I mean by intrinsic value is their internal value to the world, what they bring, their merit, their character. And it's not perfect, but it's better than a system that's focused on, hey, they're black, they're Hispanic, we need to hire them because they're black or Hispanic. Do you imagine if you got hired by a job and you find out later on from like your boss or something, you just overhear a conversation and they say, and they're basically, you hear that you got hired because you were black and not because of your qualifications, or you got hired because you're Hispanic, or you got hired because of this or that, but it has nothing to do with your qualifications or your actually ability to perform a job. It's funny. Your skin color, your skin doesn't think and is not what performs. Your cognitive ability and your ability to empathize and understand other people is what allows you to perform. So it's a little bit funny how we judge and we make determinations on things that actually do not determine somebody's success and somebody's ability to perform. So, and I'm a big proponent of meritocracy because the thing is I'm not the best at everything. There are things that I think I'm better at than other people, but I know in certain areas there are people that are better than I am at certain things, and I think that those people deserve those positions. Now, the fun part is with that, I also do believe in giving people a chance. So sometimes if you have, let's say, two people that are similarly qualified, but one's a little bit less qualified than the other, or let's say they just have less experience, I do believe in some circumstances, regardless, I don't care about race, or if it's even two white people, two Asian people, a white and black person, whatever. You could have a fucking alien, a Martian, and a goddamn Goomba. I don't care. The main thing is I do believe in giving people a chance, because sometimes when you give somebody a chance at a position, they will rise to the occasion and outperform everyone because they want it that bad. And I do believe in that because I have had in the past opportunities where I was given a chance and I worked my butt off because I knew that it was an opportunity that I necessarily that I didn't necessarily was not necessarily the most qualified in, but I worked my butt off and just kept at it and worked hard to show that I was the right choice. So moving on, I wanted to talk now on what actually are the things specifically affecting the black community, because I think there's this huge misconception because as a society and media, we latch on to certain things that aren't really true. They're complete lies and fallacies. One example of this are the 2020 riots that apparently we don't talk about anymore, even though even though there was billions of dollars of damages caused, people lost their lives. I think there was like 50 basically in essence murders during this time. People were killed, people got injured, burned, businesses were destroyed, livelihoods were destroyed, all because of the concept of a cop killing that sparked all of this, where sadly a black man got killed by a cop. And in reality, when they looked back at it, it wasn't necessarily, there were actually a multitude of factors that went into what happened there. Now, I'm not saying that those officers did the right thing in any capacity. I think that they could have handled that situation better. and I think there are some issues with law enforcement. I do think that law enforcement in general needs to be held to a higher standard than standard citizens and regular people, because they're the ones enforcing the laws. So who in the fuck is enforcing the laws on them? And that's the truth of the matter. That I do think there are a lot of flaws in our law system, and it's they're easily corruptible, mainly because, again, they have IA and internal affairs at most of these organizations, but really there needs to be some sort of policing of the police, to where it's like, if you're a cop, you get 3 strikes, or if you get 3 strikes, you are completely disbarred from participating in law enforcement from every office in the country, or something like that, just to deter bad actors from entering the system, and also just deter the current bad actors in law enforcement. And I like the police for the most part. I think my local police department does a great job in Florida. They don't always get it right, but I think they deal with a lot of instances every year and all sorts of things. I mean, it's interesting. You call the cops for all sorts of stuff. I mean, you can call, your house gets broken into, you're being, chased by a bunch of random people, even down to, your cat stuck in the tree, or something as simple as, you lost your dog, or your kid went missing, which would be terrible, or just things like that. So they deal with all sorts of a manner of things. So they're not going to get it right every time, but at the same time, it does not excuse them from bad behavior. Now, first things first, cops are not the main cause of death in the United States for black males specifically. Not even by a long shot. It's such a small. It's like a percent of a percent of a percent of a percent of like the deaths of black males in America. I think, like, in my understanding was in 2020. I think there was a total of 20. I might get this wrong, so please correct me if I do. It was like a little bit over 20 actual confirmed black males that were killed by cops in a shooting related incident. And of those, I think about half of them were considered legal shootings because of the situation, and I don't think anybody should get shot. I think that's horrible, but sometimes shit happens and it just doesn't work out the way you want. Now, in reality, if you think about that, that's such a small thing. Now, what are the actual top 5 leading causes of black male death in America? Well, ironically, a lot of them are health related. First one is heart disease, very common among the black community, especially because, again, not all African Americans on food stamps are, necessarily impoverished, but the way that the food program, these welfare assistance programs are, they basically pay for the cheapest food possible, all the junk food, so you're more likely to get heart disease. Second one is cancer. That's pretty common in society today. Third is Alzheimer's disease. 4 is stroke, again related to junk food and whatnot. 5th, this is where it comes into is homicide. Let me break that down. Homicide, not cop-related homicide, black-on-black crime-related homicide. So you are more likely to get killed by a black man as a black man in America than pretty much anybody else. And then right after that is diabetes, again going back to unhealthy eating and access, basically the government assistance programs only paying for certain types of food, and specifically it's junk food. Now, those are the top 6 leading causes of death within black males within the United States. Now, other issues the black community is facing right now. Education is a huge problem, especially in underfunded districts. I don't think it's the funding. I don't think it's a funding issue, to be honest with you, because I don't think throwing money at a problem is the answer. I think it's related to how our public school systems are run. They are not incentivized to perform well. They are not incentivized to be there and help their students. I think there are great teachers, but I don't think the system as a whole is fantastic. I think that the concept of school choice, I think this concept of charter schools is a great example of what direction we need to move into, to allow kids the opportunity to attend the schools that they want to attend, get the best education they want. If parents could send a lot of their kids to these to better schools, they would not end up in situations to where they're in gang-related crime, drug-related incidents, etc. And I mean, there's a lot of things, and this is again an overgeneralization, but when you have to help mom pay the bills, or you're in survival mode, and school's not really providing you any ability to move forward in life, most of these kids are going to end up going to gang-related activity and crime and whatnot, especially when all of their friends are doing it. So that's really what I see as some of the issues. That it also extends into the welfare state. I think it's a huge issue that we have basically created a system to where we have generations basically stuck in this cycle of staying in poverty because they are literally hooked to the teats of the government, because the government incentivizes not working, having kids out of wedlock. The more kids you have, the more money you get in tax breaks you get from the government related to welfare. So I think the welfare state in general is a huge issue. I think in some instances, yes, it can help people because it does help people get out of, crap situations. They can, like affordable housing and whatnot. But in reality, one thing that we need to be focusing on, rather than just giving someone a fish, teach them how to fish. I'm going to relate this to Jesus here, but Jesus said it's more important to teach people how to fish, not just give them a fish. When you teach somebody how to fish, they can feed themselves for a lifetime. If you just give somebody a fish, they can feed themselves for a day. That's the difference. We're giving people a fish. They're never going to be able to feed themselves for a lifetime if they do not know how to create success and wealth within their community. The other thing I think is there's a cultural issue in which crime, drugs, sex, money, opulence, degeneracy, and vanity are in essence glorified, especially in music specifically. And you have a lot of kids that grow up that want to, they want to be athletes and, rappers or musicians or artists or producers or whatnot. And that's a great goal. But there also needs to, for some people, and really for everyone, you need to have an idea of practicality that this isn't necessarily always going to work out. You should have a backup option, and a great route of that is education and getting yourself into a position where you can maybe attend school. I'm a huge proponent of trade schools, becoming an electrician or a plumber or a mechanic, because you can make good money doing that. It's not necessarily the easiest work, but it does give you the ability to work on your own and work for yourself. Now, moving on to some solutions. I already know I touched into this a little bit. First things first, regarding education, offering the ability of school choice, especially within impoverished communities. Charter schools are another big thing. Basically, funding and providing funding to schools that actually do a good job at teaching students and providing students with the opportunity to excel in life, not just giving money to these inner city schools that don't really do anything except squander it. I mean, yes, to some degree they try to do their best, but it's also like when you have teachers there that don't really want to teach, they're just doing it for a job to get a paycheck. How are they going to inspire children to grow up and try to succeed in life? And that's the thing. We need to really start with education. Next is really, I would say, a culture shift, and stop focusing so much on the idea of opulence and vanity and all of this. Like, you need to have like 10 cars and all this money and just a fat stack of cash and a golden chain and this and that. I have nothing against rap or any of that music. I actually listen to quite a bit of rap myself. But the thing is, though, is I understand that I shouldn't glorify that lifestyle, and it's not something that I necessarily want to live to such an extreme. It's okay. I don't have any issue with wealth at all. I'm totally fine with people creating success and being wealthy. But and I know that some of these rappers and artists and athletes go back into the communities and try to give back. But one critique I would say, in my opinion, is that I think they should focus more on trying to help these kids with education opportunities and whatnot, rather than like, becoming an athlete or a rapper or this and that. It's like, that's good for, on the side. If you want to do that, I'm totally fine with pursuing your dreams and passions, but focus on also the ability of creating practicality within your life to where, if this doesn't work out, you always have something that you can fall back on. So the other thing is, for the solution, and specifically regarding crime, we just need to have a culture shift and understand that, through education and other means, you don't need to live a life through theft and crime and whatnot to actually be successful. That's not the only way to escape out of these impoverished communities. So with that, I'm just going to close out a little bit. Really, this was to speak about, the legacy of Dr. King, just because I think we've, as a society, have moved so far away from what his dream was, and what that speech, I Have a Dream, was about. The idea of equality for all and living out the true values that were set forth in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, that all men, and I'm not just taught men is not men, all men, women are created equal in the eyes of God and in the eyes of our society. And following through on that, we need to look past this identitarianism, this idea of, skin color, race, religion, and all of that determine everything, because that that is a society that none of us should want to live in. I don't want to live in it for sure, because I want to live in a society where the most important thing is the ideas that you bring to the table and your character as a person. So with that, I'm going to leave it there. If you like the video, I'd love that you hit a like, and then if you are interested, I would definitely love for you to subscribe. Other than that, hit that notification bell if you're interested in new content. I'm trying to release a video every Friday and then every Monday as well. But I will be releasing more videos like this in the future, and then also a couple different types of content as well. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you, and have a great day.